G'day. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in person and for everyone remote. Just wanted to sort of introduce who we have speaking today and say, thanks for making the time. So today's event, we're talking about 24/7 visibility, governance and security for your OT with Defender for IoT. And welcome to LAB3 people. So we've got Anthony joining us here, who's the Director of Network and Security from LAB3. Jean's on the call from LAB3, who's the Practice Lead for Networks at LAB3. And then from Microsoft, we've got Joe, who's our IoT Security Architect. So thanks again once again for joining. And with that, I'm just going to hand straight over to Joe to get started.
Hi everyone, good afternoon everyone from sunny, cold Canberra. When everyone thinks about IoT, they think about factories and industrial, and so the ICS type stuff, and that's right, the operational technology, that's key. But there's also enterprise IT. That's another avenue that now businesses are starting to think about, because now we've got smart buildings. We've got smart building management systems, we've got the HVACs. They're all connected now. Thermostats, they're all connected to networks, to the corporate network in some way or another. And then, the corporate IT, you got your phones, obviously your VoIP phones, you've got printers connected, but then you also could possibly have coffee machines. I know in our office in North Sydney, we've got our coffee machines are all pretty fancy, with a big LED screen, menu, and you can see it's connected to the wireless. It's got the little wireless symbol. Obviously our network, so even the APs, the routers and switches that are doing maybe IoT specific things, and then our endpoints as well. So our laptops, our phones, in certain places. So IoTs can mean many different things. OT, IoT is what we generally try to say, but it's all encompassing. So enterprise IT is definitely something to consider, as well as your traditional industrial IoT and your OT. So what's happening is exponential growth. So as the slide says, 27 billion devices by 2025, and because like I said, with the different types of devices where we would find IoT type devices and OT type devices aren't just in your factories and your production facilities, they're in your supply chain. And supply chain is a physical supply chain, or it could be a third party that you use. So it's not just the conveyor belt production line supply chains and trucks. It can be, third parties that they're doing something with IoT. Right? And what an issue is, one of the main security concerns of IoT is visibility, and having that visibility to see what is actually connected and what the behavior of those connected devices are, who they're talking to, why they're talking to, etc. And then obviously, you got your back office stuff. So you got your printers that are connected that are always sitting idle in the office, and now with working from home and hybrid work, and we can kind of see people going back to the office, so these printers are going to be used. So then we need to be able to see what's usual and unusual behavior of those printers, because they want to be, working at 120% like they normally would in the full office. I want to give some examples too of some real world attacks, some attacks that have happened over the last couple of years. One that comes to mind is obviously the Colonial Pipeline that happened pretty recently last year. And that was, done by someone getting into having to get the credentials. So he did a phishing attack, got some credentials, got onto the management control system, which is generally a jump box, which already had network access back into IT. So he didn't have to do any fancy hacks into the firewalls and do anything like that. All he had to do was go across, because he already had the access with the user that he obtained credentials of. And then from there, he installed his malware, and luckily was caught before he had a chance to do some damage. So here are some things that we're hearing in the industry about, why it is now a board level discussion. So board levels, especially with enterprise IT, they're actually starting to realise that, with the digital transformation, with the hybrid workforce, having to, work from home and having to open up access to parts of the network that generally haven't been, giving them an understanding, it opens up the attack surface, right? So it widens the risk. because more devices are online that might not have been patched, can't be patched, or haven't been patched, or didn't even know they were there. Again, so that comes back to that visibility. IoT specifically type attacks target production lines. So they will, hold to ransomware. We got your backups, or we're going to start shutting down PLCs in the OT environment unless you pay this ransomware. Because once they're in the system, they can then deploy specific malware that is specific to OT. Because there are, bad actors out there that know OT as well as the OT engineers, and now they will have the malware for that. And then, again, that can come down to safety too, and that can be obviously playing with the building management system, playing with the HVAC, turning the aircon on too high, turning it on too low, turning it off, things like that. It's all about the safety, and then that can impact revenue in different ways too, with production lines and retail distribution centers, like I mentioned earlier. And that point I just made too about the SOC. So the enterprise SOCs wouldn't have visibility into this, because generally in an OT environment, IoT environment, they'll have specific workstations that manage and monitor the OT and IoT devices. So bringing that into the SOC, you need to then train your whole SOC, or have specific SOC engineers that will look after that to understand that risk and give that visibility. And that is, very hard to do, especially because if it is an air gap system, how do they get that how do they get that management monitoring tool into an enterprise SOC, which could be in their, HQ, or could be outsourced to a partner or provider. So it's given that, providing that visibility, and the boards are aware of this, and they're seeing that, they're seeing what's happening with those attacks that I mentioned previously, where it can, impact life, impact safety, impact revenue. One of the other big reasons is the update to the Critical Infrastructure Act last year in December. So where, we have all these from the original bill in 2018, communications, water and sewage, energy, utilities, transport, right, health and Medicare. It's now been built upon that to include an incident response plan. So around your OT, IoT, if there is ransomware in your distribution center or in a power plant or something like that, and you need to be able to do your vulnerability assessments. And how do you do that if you don't know what software or even the hardware models have vulnerabilities? You need that visibility again. Access the system information. So find out the model numbers, because even if nobody is on site, or if it's, in some tower that it's unmanned, right? How do you get that access to the system? And again, the security exercises around the planning, the BCP planning around that.
Awesome. Thank you, Joe. Cool. One thing that we'll show you, we'll actually walk you through a little bit about actually how LAB3 has worked with Microsoft and applied this for some of the more local customers over here as well. But just before I do that, I'd actually like to get a show of hands, or hands up, I guess, virtually, as we are in that hybrid world now. Who's actually in the OT teams? So I'm trying to work out who do I have from IT and OT on this webinar. Both. On the call, a few hands as well. And do I have anyone who's just security as well? Maybe just give a love heart. Yeah, one hand, that's fine. Yeah, cool, awesome. So let me just quickly change the presentation. Awesome. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anthony Wales from LAB3, the Director for Security and Network here. Today, we're going to walk you through a little bit about how we've applied it with ourselves and our customers as well. And we're actually hoping to give you a little bit of a demo, because at the end of the day, seeing is believing. I know that you've seen probably a lot of good stuff online. You've probably heard a lot of good stuff just then over the last 30 minutes. We'll actually give you a live demo and actually show you how we can even do a demo with your environment, your data, without actually connecting anything at all, which we can actually do just in a very short 1 hour session as well, which would be really cool. Just before I go through that, I'm not too sure how many of you have actually heard who LAB3 are, so I'll just give a very quick elevator pitch on who we are. In short, we have over 300 professionals. I think we've got about 330 now. Very heavily engineer focused, and we've got pretty much every certification under the sun, especially when it comes to Microsoft. We were even fortunate enough in about 2 years ago to win Microsoft Partner of the Year, which is really cool. But again, it's really an alliance with Microsoft, which has enabled us to do some really, really amazing things. We don't just do security though, so it's probably worth pointing out that we do a lot of other stuff such as cloud, modern workplace, network, data, IoT, AI, and app innovation. But it's actually the way that we do security that really makes us different. So rather than it being its own technology pillar, which it can stand alone, and we do work with customers on security-only projects, it's actually the way that we overlay it across everything and actually sell it embedded into everything, which is really what makes us different. And without going through all of them today, what we're really talking about is how we can provide some consulting to allow you to do discovery, not as a once-off, but continual discovery. There's no point you going, cool, I know what's in my environment now, we'll check on it in 1 year and see if it's changed. That doesn't really work too well. So how can we do continual discovery? Moving into our Security Fusion package, which covers our IoT and OT behavior analytics, which is trying to get you those insights into that, what looks good, what looks wrong, how can you set boundaries around that as well to actually start to give off alarms. And look, for those who are on security in the call, we've all been there, we've turned on all this awesome security stuff and you've realized you've got 40 dashboards that you need to watch. So how do you pull it all together? How do you integrate it into your SIEM? I'm making a strong assumption that most of you here are probably using Microsoft products, given that this is held by Microsoft. And really, how do we pull that together to really join the teams of both IT and OT, have enterprise visibility of what's going on, and ideally have this at a 24/7 ongoing perspective as well. One thing that's really important to highlight is that everything that I'm going to talk about today is actually not only ISO 27001 certified, but also IRAP certified too. So as we're talking about the Critical Infrastructure Act, and there's lots of cool acronyms depending on whether you're working in the energy sector with the AEMO group, etc. But all of the things that we actually provide, both as us, but also the solutions which we design for customers, are all IRAP certified too. So that adheres to the 1,356 controls, which, especially given that I'm sure a lot of you guys are critical infrastructure, that can really start to help remove some of the hurdles as well in enabling some of these tools as well.
To do protected networks.
Up to protected, yeah. Some of the things that make us really different when it comes to security. So, we actually work with customers. We're definitely not trying to replace security teams. Everything that we deploy, regardless of whether it's SIEM, SOC, IoT, security, etc., is in your environment, right? Managed from your environment if that's what you want, etc. So really what that enables our clients is to be in full control at all times, have visibility themselves, all the tools and tricks that we'll walk through, you will have access to as well. And obviously data custodianship will come with that. The other really big difference is that we do everything by code. So I'm sure you've seen those 6 pillars before, nothing really new for MSP, but what is new is the way that we don't just provide services, we actually have built products by deploying it by code. And yes, you get the code, right? So again, to deploy it all, to manage it all by CI/CD, ticking all those governance boxes, continual vigilance, etc., you will actually get the code, you will have the product. And, let's say if it's a once-off engagement, that's fine, you keep it, it's yours, right? So really, really cool there too. And the last part is really, we can extend it across to full service. So, talking about how you integrate, other threat intelligence feeds, how do you integrate it into other stuff that's not OT or other, important things for yourself as well, we can help provide that coverage too. Cool. So just to replay a little bit, and I know I'm going through this quick because we do really want to get to this demo. This is actually what we see for our customers. So I speak to the OT teams a lot because we actually have that IoT arm, and they go, we want to do great, cool things, transformative. We're going to cost heaps of savings, etc. But we're really concerned about health and safety. How do we do this cool IoT stuff that you guys want to build and integrate into an environment that is a black box because we don't want anything to go in or out of it, right? Really, really difficult. IT have a slightly different conversation with us. They go, the board have told us that IT is now head of security because perhaps there's no security team. And now IT/security is in charge of all the OT stuff too, of which they have no visibility into, they have no idea what's going to go on. And how do they provide that reporting that's now required for that Critical Infrastructure Act that's in scope? So both teams are in quite a difficult position because OT want change while still holding their safety, and IT won't allow change because they're now head of security until they have visibility. That's what one of the unique things of what Defender for IoT does, is that it's actually really, really easy to kind of please both worlds. It's easy to give visibility to IT and OT teams if they want, right, into what they have in their environment, what it's doing, what normal is, and if it's safe, whilst leaving it in a black box, that can still run by itself without internet access, etc. as well. The way that we do it is, and I know that I'm probably getting into a bit of detail here, is that we start with the SCADA network. So that's like all of your OT stuff. You've got your Purdue label, etc. That then gets connected into a Defender for IoT sensor, both virtual and physical. Personally, we prefer physical. It's generally a bit easier. If you've got a virtual machine that's typically in the IT environment, you can see where that starts to become a bit hairy. So we do use the physical sensor. That then sends alerts to Sentinel, which then can actually integrate into your ITSM too. And you're probably going, but whoa, I thought we don't connect the SCADA network to this box. How are you getting away with that? How is it staying IRAP compliant? All those kind of questions. Yeah, actually exactly right. What we're doing is that we're just mirroring the packets. So it's a one-way street from your SCADA network to that box. So again, nothing can go the other way. You can monitor it additionally if you really want to, but nothing can go the other way. All those controls are actually set on the switch over here as well, and subsequent switches as well. That enables you to have visibility whilst not actually compromising the integrity of what's going on the left-hand side. And then really being able to push it all the way across to the right is, I'm sure a lot of the people on the call and who are present here today as well have multiple sites. Again, we've all been there. We've all been that network manager who's gone, I need to do a patch, and you've got to go on site, centrally do it. It's really painful. Then sites become out of sync, or you've got new sites, etc. How do you centrally manage it? So being able to have, the Defender for IoT sensor, which can be centrally managed via your Azure tenancy as well, then integrated into Sentinel, which again is in your tenancy. So now you can have that security layer as well. And if required, integrated into your ITSM to actually follow your internal ITIL process as well. And really what that's doing is, you can see a few screenshots, which we'll show through soon, is that it's providing you continual discovery, 24/7 visibility, security insight, and is ITIL compliant as well. Can I get a show of hands if anyone's actually tried Defender for IoT yet? Is this kind of everyone's first look? A few shaking heads, yeah. Oh, awesome, cool. The demo, which will be coming up soon, will be good. What I'm going to do, I'm going to pass you over to Gene, who you can see on the top right corner. He's going to walk you through just a few other slides to go into a little bit more detail, and then we'll actually walk you through the demo of all the things that we've just discussed as well. Over to you, Gene.
Thanks, Anthony. Hi, everyone. My name is Gene Chu. I'm the practice lead for network at LAB3. So yeah, continual discovery. I know this was mentioned a few times now. So what we find with a lot of our customers is that when we deploy this, they don't. There's actually not a lot of visibility of what's in the environment. So you can't actually especially with I know this is a security product, but without knowing what's out there, you can't actually protect those devices, right? So with the Defender for IoT, not only that it does when you deploy it does that initial discovery and maps out all the devices and the network and connections in your environment. It does that on an ongoing basis. So as through your environment, as you add and remove devices, especially with OT, usually it's a third party that comes in, extends the manufacturing or plant area, adds more devices to the environment. As that gets added, that gets continuously discovered and it shows up in the dashboard as an inventory, either through the device mapping or the inventory list. So you get a continuous view. So rather than just a one-off discovery, you have a timestamp and this is what's in there. Now this is an ongoing view. So ongoing, sees what the device there and then also monitors for the threats. And for each of the device that gets discovered, it goes into quite a bit of detail. It picks up the name, the host name, IP address, the vendor, even the types of protocols, like Modbus or other Siemens protocols that's being communicated, and also the MAC address. So you actually get quite a comprehensive view of the different devices out there, and also the degree, like even the firmware versions that's on those devices, PLCs, RTUs, and all. I'll go through more of this view in the demo later. Next slide, Anthony. Central maintenance. So the Defender for IoT is designed with scalability in mind. Typically you won't have one sensor. You have multiple sites, and within the sites, sometimes you have multiple locations as well. So what happens is then you end up deploying multiple sensors throughout a single site or across multiple sites. And that's where with the central maintenance, through a combination of the management console, the central, and also Defenderability on Azure, you can centrally manage all your sensors and devices. So you have a consolidated view from, say, monitoring. You can see all your sensors, it is up, down, the health status, the firmware versions. You can see if, what firmware version it is, and also the threat intelligence database. And from there, you can centrally, push that across, your across all your sites, all your devices. So then, you have, that makes sure all your sensors are up to date with the latest firmware, and also the threat intelligence database to make sure you're picking up, the latest signatures and threats out there. And from there, you can also push out configuration changes. So as you you configure the different, I guess, parameters within the sensors centrally, you can push it out to multiple devices, all from a single point. So you don't actually have to go into individual box and manage them. And on the right hand side, you see this screenshot. It shows the threats in a consolidated view. So imagine you have a threat going on across multiple. Sometimes you have multiple sensors for redundancy, or it's the same threat coming through multiple sites. That's where with this central point of view, you get a consolidated view across your environment, rather than having to manually log on to each and every single box. Next slide. So ongoing response. So what happens when a threat happens? So again, through either management console or up all the way up to Azure and to Sentinel, the alert will come up, and then from there you can really drill deeper into the event that's happened. For example, the screenshot, the top left here showing that there's a device that's doing PLC programming that's not, I guess, not common, or maybe it's coming from a device that doesn't usually do programming. So it's sent an alert there, and then from there you can click into details and see, okay, what's exactly happening. They did run a specific code, and then take action on it accordingly. And then to the right-hand side here, you have your ITSM integration. So over here with an example of ServiceNow, which we use. So Sentinel and ServiceNow, we can integrate it together, where it auto raises an incident when something like that happens. So this is all with this, then once an incident gets created, you can then get it assigned to the relevant team. It could be the SOC team, the OT team, to actually investigate further and to make sure that it gets remediated. And the other cool feature about the ITSM integration is the asset database, or the CMDB. So to the point earlier where we don't really not everyone knows what's out there in the environment. With this, all these assets or devices that gets that's discovered on Defenderability can be imported to the CMDB in ServiceNow, and then from there the incidents actually now just like most other ITSM events, it gets logged against that particular device. So now, if say if there's a particular device that's been problematic, you can actually go and have a look, a specific device on the ITSM tool and say, hey, with this device, in the history, and as you can see that multiple incidents have happened. So is there something else that we need to look further into to make sure that there's no problem or any threats there. One thing I do want to highlight, so the bottom left, is the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So this is on Sentinel, where it ingests data from multiple sources, including Defenderability, and then assess that against the MITRE ATT&CK framework. So the MITRE ATT&CK framework is a knowledge base of techniques used by attackers to try to get into your environment. And this is quite a comprehensive database across different multiple different techniques that Sentinel assess and highlights to you, your environment, how, I guess, mature are you in those areas, and what can be further improved. So with bringing together with Defenderability, OT, a common one that we see, one is lateral movement, and the other one is public facing. So as with OT, it's traditionally it's meant to be air gap, right, where OT can't access out or to the internet. But with the rise of automation, we're seeing more and more devices needing internet access for AI, ML, to be able to have that smarts. So quite often this will show up in the discovery that devices are trying to access the internet. So those, like I said, those when a new device or environment or process or plant gets installed, sometimes they'll be installing, say a 4G modem direct to the internet, or maybe a wireless access point. All those, sometimes it's really hard to be across all of it. So with this, you can actually see that, okay, this device is trying to get to the internet. What should we do about it? Is it allowed? Or should we block it? Or perhaps maybe use a firewall to limit down to only specific ports that's required. Next slide. Okay, so I understand that we've been through this architecture a few times now. So I'll go through it at a high level. Again, I just want to focus on the point that this is agentless. So with the OT devices, a lot of them are proprietary. So it's not like you can install an endpoint or antivirus on it to do a scan. So with this being agentless, Defender for ID is sort of like an IDS, an intrusion detection system, where it sits off the side of the network, just listening, picking all the packets and analyzing that. So we've heard of some other services out there where it's not passive, where it's more active, and that can be quite sensitive to the OT environment, which is typically low CPU, low memory, or even low bandwidth. So being active, that can sometimes be a bit intrusive to the network and potentially bring down the network. So with Defender for ID, it's all passive. It's just listening and analyzing. So next slide. Next. So this is stage one. We deploy the Defender for ID sensor, and then the key points of tapping is between level 1, 2, and 3 is here on the left hand side. This is where the HMI or engineering workstations typically talk to the PLCs, where they're sending programming commands like for example reading a temperature and then maybe shutting off a certain system for safety. So this is where the Defender for ID will tap into and listen by the network, and then to do the analysis. Then from there, the Defender for ID appliance will connect to the cloud and feed into Defender for ID on Azure and also Sentinel. Then you can see how this all comes together. Next. Stage 3 is there next? Oh yeah. Okay. So as I explained earlier, it's gone to Sentinel. The alerts are raised, integrated to ITSM, and then you get your relevant groups taking action on it. But what the Defender for ID solution can also do is you can see stage 3 to the right hand side, arrow down back to NGFW, which is next gen firewall. You can even have integration with the common firewall vendors out there to say, hey, I can see something happening here. API call or to the firewall to lock it down further, right, to block certain traffic. So it's a more automated process that can be done so that you can protect your environment when it sees something. Next. Okay. So now I'll move on to the demo. So at a high level, I'll be going through the Defender for IoT, the sensor, and then there's the appliance itself. It could be physical or virtual, and then Azure, the Defender for IoT Azure site, which is the consolidation of multiple sites and all, and then Sentinel. So let me share my screen. So this here is the Defender for IoT appliance or sensor. Like I said, this comes in the form of either a physical appliance or virtual. So over here we have a physical appliance, which is the HP DL20. So this is the dashboard of the sensor. Over here you get quite a good view of the appliance itself, the interfaces. You can see here the top 5 protocols that's seen on the network, and then by port, and the top alerts on the bottom right hand side here. So the device map. So coming from a network background, this is one of my favorite features because it does the listening and then it's actually built a topology of the environment. And really important. The connectivity between the devices in your environment, as you can see, is quite comprehensive. As mapping out all the different connections. And if I scroll down to an example here, you can see that there's some HMIs and PLCs that's connected to each other, and there's an alert as well. Later on, I'll go into more details as I drill deeper into it. So this is the topology view, and from a connection point of view, the really cool feature here is you can actually click on this, layout by Purdue model, and it's actually map it out based on that, level 1, 2, and 3, and then you can just focus on the parts that you need to look at. So for example, again, those PLCs, HMIs are all displayed here. So from a device point of view, this is, I've gone through the topology and the map, and here we have the inventory. So the inventory is the same view, but it's just more of a list. So you have now a list of all the devices in your environment. You can hit export and save this. But like what I was mentioning before, it goes through, it gives you the IP address, the name, when was it last seen, the type of devices, the protocols like TriStation, Tricon, Siemens, the MAC address, and also the vendor device. So over here, you can, if you can, click onto it to get more details, like when it was last seen, shows us an alert on this, what protocols used. And the map view of, from this device, what is it connected to, any other devices, and then the alerts as well, like, potentially a malicious activity here. Okay, so I'll move on to the alerts now. Again, right now, this is just the sensor stuff, which is one device, one site. But later on, I'll go through it from a Azure point of view, which is a consolidated view. So here we have a few alerts that's been triggered. So I'll go one of it, for example, with this suspicious malicious activity. As I click on it, it says this between these two IP address, this suspicious, and you can go into more details. And then it's shown that it's talking about 1502, and it's thinking that this is potentially an attack, and this is the code. And it's two different IPs that's identified, and the device details as well. So from here now you can it will suggest take action, disconnect, and perform incident response. Yeah, that's where you can go and physically go have a look at the device, and figure out is it been compromised, and what to do, potentially removing it, or maybe even upgrading the firmware as required. So now I'll go through the risk assessment. This is again another really powerful feature. The assessment is you click on this report. It'll take a few minutes to generate, and then what it does is it comes up with a report of your environment. So I won't go through the entire report. I'll just go through a few of the key points. So over here, for example, it's given you a score of 70%. There's room to improve. It scanned 52 devices, 2 needing improvement, and 4 vulnerable devices. So I'll skip straight to that section here. So for example, here it's picked up a bunch of PLCs, engineering station, that for example this device has malware indication, to investigate further, and also there's the management PC and in the environment that Windows 10 potentially with all the updates not applied, so it is identify others for you to take action. And we have some HMI PLC devices here. And then network security risk, it's identified, that the same suspicious activity, as mentioned before, with the malicious activity alert that came up earlier. And then also the example I mentioned earlier, right? So where internet connection. So this is where it's detected OT devices trying to get out to internet, and where is it trying to get to? So again, if your environment is meant to be air gap, like why is it doing this? What we've seen is sometimes from a OT IT network point of view, it's completely separate. There's no access. There's a firewall there. But what I've seen is sometimes when a vendor comes in, they install their environment, and then they put like I said, a 4G modem straight out to the internet, so that you can do some remote management or any smart automation around it. So this is where you can identify that and take action accordingly. Here's an example: a TP-Link wireless access point was detected. So that's that's an issue that needs to be addressed. And then it gives you a summary of your network protocols and environment within the environment. The traffic analytics at the top, traffic that's going through your OT environment.
Hey, Jean, sorry to interrupt. There was a question from Dan Maskell. How are you managing the traffic from the IoT sensor into the management console? Is it data diode methodology? And apologies if I've mispronounced that, Dan.
Yeah, so there's multiple ways, that can be done. We've seen with some where the defender, the sensor, the sensor will be in the OT environment while the management console is in the IT environment. And then with firewall rules, strictly just allowing only that specific traffic through to management console. And then from there, you can have this option of the proxy where rather than your sensor going straight out to the cloud, it either uses management console or another proxy before getting out. So rather than exposing your sensors straight to the internet, you use one of those methods to secure your devices.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Dan?
I suppose that raises another question. So can an on-prem management console communicate that data out to a cloud management console?
So the management console is an on-prem, either physical via device or virtual device. And then it communicates to the cloud or to Azure or IoT Hub.
Okay, thank you.
So moving to trends and statistics. So these are dashboards that you can create. So by default, it's blank. So we've created a few common ones that we find quite useful, which is mainly the network traffic and asset. So with network traffic, similar to the report before, you can see the traffic in your environment. And also with the assets, again, you can see what the typical OT type of traffic is going through your environment. The last one here is attack vector. So this is a simulation feature that I'll go through this. Where it simulates the potential after doing a scan and all the connectivity and also potential vulnerabilities. And what it does is it simulates the potential attack vectors that an attacker can use against the environment. So here I'll do show device map, show all source. Against all the combination of all source and all target. And I hit save. So that will take a while to generate. This is done. So here it shows you the different devices environment, how it could potentially go, the different attack vectors. So go through one, for example, this one. They're all about the same, where because these devices are exposed, have access to the internet, that's where it's shown a path that it can potentially get into from one device and then to the next through lateral movement. So in Sentinel, I'll show you in more detail how that's being shown. So that's all for the sensor itself. I'll move on to the Azure environment. So this here is this is Defender for IoT on Azure. This is where the view gets consolidated across multiple sites and multiple sensors. So it's similar to the sensor. You get all this device view on different devices. And then if you go to alerts, this again similar to the sensor view. You can now click on this. You see how now there's this new preview feature on the right. It shows here, this attack is potentially a lateral movement, against that MITRE attack framework. Give full details. So now the beauty about this now is, if before it was a single sensor, but now with on Azure, you can see it across multiple sensors coming through, whether it's occurring on multiple sensors, across different sites. So you can see here the MITRE attack tactics is lateral movement. Okay, so moving to Sentinel, now this is the next step, right, where the defender for ID sensor is feeding information to Sentinel, and now you get this consolidated view for your SOC team to view across now not just across defender for IT across multiple sites, but also across IT, across all the other data that Sentinel ingests. So now you get a better correlation, right? Are the attackers trying to come in from your IT, then hopping onto OT? We can see that correlation, that the attacker tried to use. So here, not incidents. If you go to workbooks, so here within Sentinel is a specific view for Defender for IoT, and then it shows you, okay, across all the sites, all the sensors, what are the common things? You see the common one here is direct internet connectivity detected, and then the different sites and all the different alerts based on the categories.
You can actually customize this as well, right? So every customer is going to be a little bit different. This is just a bit of an example of how you can kind of extrapolate the data. You might say, you know what, we want the OT people to see the security stuff too, right? So you can actually enable part of Sentinel only accessible to certain people and the rest available for other people as well, obviously for security. But say, for example, you might go, you know what, I've got so many different sites, I just want to have a site-by-site comparison. We can extrapolate it, put different tables, data, etc., add in additional queries in order to be able to kind of play in whichever way you want. And another method as well is that we can actually use other data points to even enrich this as well, right? So say, for example, if you have particular naming schemes, if it's going through a particular CMDB or something else like that, you might even be able to go down to a point, at this site, go to Joe, right? And then immediately you've got that, and you can even provide the automation there to alert those people. So don't think it's, sorry, it's just with the security team, bad luck, they got to deal with it. No, it could be like, cool, we've seen an alert, it's with this device, it's at this site, immediately notify the general manager as per, the earlier slide, right? Still security is involved, right? But you're reducing the response time in order to perform action.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. That actually concludes my demo. So yeah, over to you, Anthony.
Awesome. Thanks, Gene. So now you've had a bit of an overview of what, IT versus OT. You've had a bit of an overview over kind of how we can try to provide that level of protection, what tools we use. You've had a bit of a demo to kind of go, okay, cool. This is some of the cool data, how we can extrapolate it and view it relatively quickly. Again, these aren't massive projects. These are relatively quick. It's meant to be relatively automated, but most importantly, inside of your environment for your data sovereignty. One of the things that we offer customers is actually to perform a workshop, right? And really what this is to enable you to do is actually give us an export of just the packet capture. So you pick a particular switch and go, cool, we think that this is kind of that level. You give us that, and then we can actually run that report for you just with the packet capture. Now, you might think, well, why do we want that? Well, you probably want to make sure it works in your environment. It gives you pretty good insight relatively quick to make sure it's going to be nice and good. But why we like that a lot is a lot of times we go through this whole thing with a customer and they go, okay, cool, this is a great idea. And then we go, cool, where's your network diagram? So we know exactly where to put it. And the IT team goes, nah, we're doing this to discover what's there. And because of that, we don't have network diagrams. So really, again, by being able to use that packet capture is a very easy way without us having to go on site, plug in things, etc. We can try a few different points. We might get it right, we might not. That's fine. It doesn't take long. It takes an hour also just for us to do this, right? And for us to be able to help you out. Another thing, in addition to that, not just for Defender for IT, we actually got our own questionnaire, which we walk through with customers to try and work out what's important for you too, to help you build you a bit of a roadmap. So again, it makes it a little bit more easier for you to go, cool, what worked really well with our mining customers, for example? What worked really well with our critical infrastructure utility customers instead? And we can kind of walk you through what kind of works great, bad, etc., to help coach you and go, well, these are different problems that we ran into or different benefits that they saw in order to be able to overcome that as well. And really the way that we break it is into kind of these three core stages, right? So where we perform a workshop up front, typically there's at least just a 30-minute meet and greet just first, because we're going to have to tell you how we want the packet capture at least. Then we come back. Ideally, we prefer that you send us the packet capture in advance to the workshop, and we can just have the report ready to go then. Otherwise, we can build it with you. That's not too much of an issue. Next stage is that we would actually propose to do a pilot. We go, okay, is this the data that you want? And you'll probably go, yep, this looks pretty good. Hey, can we pick one site to deploy it? If you need us to do smart hands and feet, we can do that. We've got coverage across all of Australia, including some of the more difficult areas as well. After that, you go, hell yeah, this is a success. Now we want to integrate it into SIEM, something like Sentinel, or now we want to deploy it at more sites. And that's when we move to scale. And what we've done here is that, going through each of these stages, you learn in the workshop, make sure that you're getting the right data for you to understand, hey, look, this is going to help. In the pilot, we start to create a template or a run book on how to deploy this with you, what's worked, what hasn't, what benefits are. Then we've gone to scale, of which we can scale as quick or as slow, depending on how you want, as you'd want. And then lastly, you might come and go, hey, Anthony, that's great, but I only work 9 to 5 and I want 24/7 coverage or something else like that. If you were interested, we do also provide 24/7 SOC services, again, located inside of Australia. And again, all of these things happen within your environment. So at no point do we go, oh, cool, now it's got to go to the run, we've got to take your data out or something else like that. No, we use your Sentinel. It's all stays inside of there. Again, really important for that IRAP certification, which is obviously covering all of this as well. Lastly, if you do need to get in touch with us, I've just got 2 names here, but obviously feel free to reach out to us through Microsoft. Microsoft's very, very aware of who we are. We're here located around the corner as well. But here's just some contact details of just 2 of our client executives. But we've got some actually a few here as well on site who you can definitely feel free to reach out to, or just find me on LinkedIn. That should be fine. Well, look, thank you everyone for coming today. I know it's a bit interesting in this hybrid world. It's great to see some people face to face. It has been a while. So thank you guys for coming, showing up, and thank you everyone for joining on the meeting as well. Appreciate it. Cool.
Thank you.